Dzień dobry, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz, to jest 61. Krakowski Festiwal Filmowy, a z nami reżyserka filmu Shtetlers. With us, the director of Shtetlers, Katia Ustinowa. Hello, Katia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. I hope you are too. And my first question, I guess, would be about: did this story come from a personal experience in terms of, for example, your family or your friends or Jewish community in New York or in the United States, or was it more of, or did it come out more from a documentary filmmaker interest in the subject?
Well, I could say this was both because by the time I started filming this film, I just graduated from School of Visual Arts in New York, where I pursued my documentary career. But by that time, it coincided with the fact that my father back in Moscow created the Museum of Jewish History in Russia. So my fascination with this particular film, with this particular theme of small Jewish towns started when my father created this museum, and its unique collection remains the most authentic exhibit of Jewish life in Russia. So, and he was talking just only about his museum and only about the collection he was building. And actually, when his team of researchers and scholars started bringing artifacts from the outskirts of the former Soviet Union, like cookware, furniture, religious items, I discovered that there were living people behind these objects, and which I was not aware of. And I was not aware of that the Shtetlers actually persevered after the Second World War, and that the Jews from these small little towns lived in these actual Shtetlers up till 1990s. That was actually a great surprise for me and a great reveal of the film, that it was still there just some 20 years ago.
Yeah, because we would think maybe that Second World War completely destroyed that life, or maybe the policy of Soviet Union completely destroyed that. But it, like you're saying, it did survive, and it was going on until the 1990s. Why do you think why did it come to an end then and there?
Why did it come to an end? Well, because first of all, you mean, well, after the German invasion, the majority of Shtetlers got destroyed and just vanished.
Yes. I meant those, but I specifically meant those that survived until the 1990s. Why?
I think it. I got you. Yeah, I think it coincided with the fact of with the decline of the Soviet empire and with the countries, because actually these small Jewish towns were located in the territory of the present day Ukraine, Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Belarus. These were all the former republics, the former Soviet republics, part of the huge empire. And when the empire sort of went down the hill and collapsed, that was the time when I mean, like, there was a lot of economic decline as well in these countries, and the borders opened as well. So those who didn't emigrate in the 1970s, the Jews who didn't emigrate in the 1970s, they decided to just leave, and that was sort of, you know, like the second grand exodus, like Exodus 2.0 from the Shtetlers. When I started filming, the Shtetlers were actually emptied of the Jewish population. That's why I gathered some people here and there, and I realized that I had to expand my search to Israel and the US, where I lived at that time and where I live now.
Yeah. So because the people emigrated to many places in the world, to the United States and to other places. this is interesting because the shtetl it seems to be a remnant of ancient culture, of a culture of another type of economy, even like the economy based on craftsmanship, on and based very much on exchanging goods and so on. And this is a fascinating look, I think, into that type of economy, which is, I think, in many ways maybe not long gone, but it's still, there are some remnants of it, but it's of course not as dominant as it used to be.
Yeah, for me, probably one of the most amazing facts was that even during the Soviet era, the era of like anti-Semitic Soviet era and oppression, and when there was no free trade and when there was no like private trade, the Jews, however, I was surprised that they still were the craftsmen in these like in this small shtetl of Shargard. They were still working as tailors, as shoemakers, as like carbonated water makers, hairdressers, and all that. So but this was historically, this was on the one hand, this was a very segregated world. And on the other hand, this was a world of a melting pot of cultures, if you will. So and a very interdependent world. And I believe that in Poland, and it was the same, because the Jews lived in the center of these small towns, and the non-Jews lived on the outskirts. So they were, at least in Ukraine, before the war, and even after the war, they were mainly peasants, the non-Jews. And the Jews were still like historically craftsmen, because they couldn't own the land. So they were craftsmen. They were actually the engine of trade, even during the Soviet era, which was also surprising to me.
Yeah, and this is interesting, this coexistence you mentioned, because on like you said, on the one hand you have segregation. On the other hand, you have a cooperation, coexistence, and like cooperating, and these people knew each other, like Jews living next to Christian Orthodox and so on. But at the same time, I think there was a strange mix of cooperation, affinity, but also class tension. Like the one group Jews craftsmen, the other peasants, and maybe some kind of condescending treatment of the peasants by Jewish craftsmen. So this sort of tensions were there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, well, to be honest with you, I haven't discovered this perspective like straight away. That was not my intention. Okay, I'm making a film about Jews and non-Jews and how they lived side by side. No, it actually, this theme sort of came to me a little bit unexpectedly, even for myself, because when I met with such people as Volodya, the hat maker, who lived with, who was actually, he and his wife Nadia were left with nothing but good memories of their Jewish neighbors, and he inherited his craft from the Jews, and she was baking babka by the Jewish recipes. And that was the time when I made this sort of unexpected discovery for myself, that there was another perspective. And that's how and why I think my film is sort of, well, I'm talking about my film, it stands out, and it is unique. I mean, like, because I don't think that there were many films that covered about the Jews, that covered this other perspective. And I was even, like, criticized of portraying a little bit idyllic kind of way of this coexistence, how they lived. But I based my film on their living memories, and the memories were different. Some accused, like one of the characters, like Amelia, she said that these were the non-Jews who betrayed the Jews and who sort of gave away them to the Germans. But on the other hand, you have Volodya, and you have this rabbi who had this reception, who was receiving non-Jews which is also, by the way, a very old tradition that existed for 200 years, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not something that was sort of like outrageously weird. It was something that existed. The non-Jews went for advice to Jewish rabbis and asked them to pray for them.
You follow their memory, but I didn't feel it was idyllic or naive in any way, because of this sort of coexistence of affinity and hostility. It's present in your film. I think it goes maybe hand in hand with each other even sometimes, which is, I think, a realistic way of looking at it. And I think that most of the time when we are talking about coexistence of Jewish communities and other communities, if there is some kind of hostility, if there is some kind of tension, usually we mean ethnic tension, racial tension maybe. But this sort of class tension, economic tension, I think it's very rare that we really touch on that subject.
Yeah, in a way, you are right. But I also think that, like they were sort of all of them, the non-Jews and non-Jews back then were Soviet people.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were sort of even in that perspective. They were not even, they were sort of equal in some ways. But the Jews, actually, the Christians were also, like practicing Christian religion in secrecy and going to the churches back then in secrecy, as well as the Jews were like praying in these secret homes, somewhere hidden. Or actually Shargorod was a very specific place, because it was sort of a very remote shtetl that survived the war, and lots of people surviving the war went back to rebuild their communities. That's why there were so many craftsmen that lived there up until 1990s. And I guess I sort of lost my train of thought. But anyway, they were in Shargorod they were actually praying. I think I have lots of recollections by Volodya the hat maker, who told me many stories of how they practiced their religion and different celebrated holidays in the open, sort of in the open, because these were very remote places. And but some people really stayed and continued living there. Although the majority of Jewish families were after seeking good education for their kids, that was always primary to them, to give good education. And all education was in the Soviet Union back then was in Russian and in the big cities. So that's why not too many people stayed in this sort of like Soviet interior. And the Jews I knew, and I know, they all lived in the big cities like Moscow, and I come from Moscow as well. And for instance, my great grandmother, she left Sztetl, I guess, right after revolution during the Civil War, along with my great grandfather. So I had personally no direct connections, except for my father having this founding this museum. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, this is also a story about I think preserving some traditions by how in all of the ways of various ways in which we preserve tradition, because I can imagine that you, as a documentary filmmaker, you look at an object, and it is an object, but at the same time there is a story behind it. And the same, I think, can be said about, for example, cuisine. The Jewish cuisine is still there and is still being practiced. So this is a sort of a non omnis morier story, that Yeah, so that not all will die, that there is a memory of that.
Yeah, I was
a very particular, tradition like food.
Yeah, thank you very much for pointing out at that. Actually, yeah, I was, because again, that was something that I felt talking to these people, that the food was actually a very important part, because when I was asking, first when I ventured out and I made 20 trips around Ukraine and a little less around Moldova, but anyway, and here in the US. And when I was talking to people, I asked a lot of questions about how they preserved the religious holidays. And actually, the holidays were many of my characters. They didn't have much recollection of practicing the holidays, but they remembered what food was cooked for each holiday. And that's how they sort of remembered it, like one of my characters, Sophia, who was still, and he's still, actually she's alive, and she's still. I just talked to her this Passover, and she told me that this year she cooked again the gefilte fish, although she's pretty old, and it's a very tedious and time consuming
yeah.
And the process, yeah. But still, there's something that, I mean, like, they don't cook anymore gefilte fish in a sock, like sort of reconstructing the fish in its original way. I don't know whether they cook it, and if you can find it in Polish restaurants. In Ukraine, I think you can still find it, because again, it was so influenced. These cooking traditions were so influenced. When I was in Chernovitz, that's Western Ukraine, I went to a restaurant where I loved eating gefilte fish. They were serving gefilte fish, which was already cut into pieces, but it was still, it had this tiny bit of skin on it.
Mm-hmm. When you went there, when you were in Ukraine and in all these places where Shtetlers lived, did you see only decay in this, in these places, in these towns that they lived? Did you see only decay and this sort of existence of this tradition only through some rituals, food, and people memory, or were there some places where there was an attempt from the state or somebody to preserve this memory in a more sort of unified way and in a more sort of concrete way, like museum or renovating a place or some kind of monument? What is your experience?
Well, unfortunately not. And again, I'm going to give you an example of Shargorod. So there was a Jewish lady in Shargorod who founded a tiny museum, because when the Jews were leaving, actually she knew Volodya the hat maker pretty well. And I also interviewed her, but she didn't, I didn't include her in the film. She made a tiny museum because when the Jews were leaving, were emigrating, they were leaving all these things behind in these houses that Volodya the hat maker, that he points at. And so she collected fantastic, cardboards and furniture with carved wooden wolves. Not the wolves, sorry, cardboard, carved wooden lions. Yeah. So, and lots of cookware again, and some stuff. These were poor places. These were poor Jews. They didn't own much, but so she wanted to have this museum, and she had a business plan that people would arrive to Kiev and go from Kiev to Shargorod, where or she would guide them, and she would work as a guide, and she would show them these houses that were century-old houses, and then everything will end up in this museum. But unfortunately, she presented this plan in Israel, but nothing happened. And by the time when I met her, the museum was located like an auto repair car shop that was adjunct to the Shargard synagogue of the 16th century, that was in complete decay. That was like in ruins. And but there's good news. They just on Facebook, I found out that they just started they found money from some investors in Australia, and they just started the renovation of this, like the oldest, probably one of the oldest synagogues ever, like 16th century. And during the Soviet era, there was some kind of juice plant there, just juice factory. Mm-hmm. That was very common. I mean, like for the Soviet regime to have, like in churches, occupied churches with factories, or just, like make storages out of them. And synagogues were not an exception. So anyway, but also the good news is that my father acquired what this Jewish lady. She was relatively young. I mean, like she belonged to the later generation of Shtetl Jews, but she still lived there. And my father actually acquired all these pieces of furniture and all these stuff. So now it's in Moscow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but mostly answering your question, mostly I saw decay everywhere.
Yeah, that is a shame, because the reason I asked this question is that if the memory of these places, these people, this way of living, these traditions, it resides only in people's memory, then until the witnesses and the people who knew these people in these places are with us, and these stories are with us, but someday they will be gone. And I think it's really important to create a space for this memory that will outlive the witnesses, outlive us. And I think of course, your film is one way to do that, but it's nice that something is going on in this department.
Yeah, and I can add that I filmed many more people that I had to select, because the film has its own structure, and I think that I selected the most interesting and the most fascinating characters, and each of them sort of is there for is in the film for a reason, like that each of them sort of follows a particular story that I wanted to tell. But I still feel like very bad that I haven't included one Jewish lady. But anyway, I filmed a lot of people, and I hope that not only I hope, I think this will happen, that my father is going to incorporate these interviews and these videos that I shot into his museum. That was actually initially one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
One of my ideas too.
Yeah.
So. And I want to add something that for the viewers that I'm also I created Shtetlers Instagram account, where I post some extra videos and some extra sound bites, extra interview bites that didn't make it into the film. So I tried to sort of entertain my audience. And yeah, I mean, although I'm already editing another film, and I'm like, I'm already in another film, which is non-Jewish. I think that I already sort of I'm done with the Jewish film, with the Jewish theme. Yeah. So, but I still want people to see what I filmed and what didn't make into the film.
Yeah, Katja, thank you very much for this conversation. Let's hope to see you in Kraków, in Poland, in the near future in person. Katja Ustinova was with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching the film, and thank you for inviting my film to be a part of your wonderful festival. I really look forward to coming to Poland one day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care and bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.